Oh, are you able to allow me to share? And oh shoot, Kurt said that he might have signed up for the women in beekeeping one. He's listed though.
He is listed, yeah.
Let me just send him the Zoom code. All the Zoom codes should be the same, right?
Yeah.
Um, okay, so am I able to share? Okay, here we go. Yeah. You can see that okay?
Yeah. Just to let everybody know that we're just waiting for Curt from FieldWatch to join. He's kind of running the presentation, so we're just trying to hunt him down. Thanks for your patience.
Thanks, Hina.
There he is.
Okay, great. Okay, well, we can go ahead and get started. Um, okay, it's great. It's being recorded. So I'm going to give a little introduction about FieldWatch, talk a little bit about how the program came to be, how it got started over the last couple of years. We've been working on this project, and then I'm going to hand over the screen to Curt Hadley from FieldWatch, and he's going to provide us all with a training session around how to make an account, how to utilize the tool, list your apiary locations on the FieldWatch map, etc. So. Maybe you all have already explored the FieldWatch website a little bit, but today we're going to be talking about FieldWatch and BeeCheck. So FieldWatch is kind of the overall mapping platform, and BeeCheck is the beekeepers portal into the online map. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sydney Miller. I manage the Vermont Bee Lab, and I've been working on helping Vermont adopt the FieldWatch program for the last 2 years now. And the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets just recently adopted the tool. And so they contract with FieldWatch and provide the FieldWatch services free of charge to Vermont agricultural stakeholders going forward. And so, kind of an overview on the FieldWatch program. It is an online mapping platform that allows easy communication and coordination between pesticide applicators, beekeepers, and crop producers. So, it's free to the user and voluntary. It's provided by this third-party organization called FieldWatch. And growers and beekeepers are able to use the map to map the locations of their fields of sensitive crops, perhaps crops and beehives. In BeeCheck and DriftWatch is the crop producers portal into the map. And then pesticides are then able to visualize neighboring areas to where they're servicing pesticide applications and are able to make informed decisions about pesticide applications and even contact neighbors to notify them of nearby pesticide applications. So, really trying to promote awareness, enhance stewardship activities between these different stakeholders, and really just trying to enhance transparency around pesticide use in general. So like I said, BeeCheck is the beekeeper's portal into kind of the mapping interface. And this all allows for privacy settings. So we've made the Vermont map. The default privacy setting is that when you plot your apiaries on the map, the only people that are able to see those are people that are registered as pesticide applicators. And so you can set your settings so that nobody else, the public, nor perhaps other beekeepers are able to see your apiary locations. And really, it's just the pesticide applicators that we are trying to promote awareness of your apiary locations too. And currently, FieldWatch services over 27 states. And you can see here, this is the numbers I put off their website, 53,000 plus individual users currently with over 2.4 million plus mapped acres on the site. And in Vermont, we are now the first of New England to adopt the program. So this will be kind of a pilot year to gauge interest from stakeholders in using the program, how useful it is for your operation, for pesticide applicators, and hopefully to continue this program into the future. But the onboarding of FieldWatch really came from, and a realization that, of course, our honeybees are becoming exposed to a variety of different combinations of pesticides between fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, and of course, miticides that we're putting in our colonies. This is from the Bee Lab's first pesticide monitoring batch of samples back in 2021, where we just tested a pilot set of 16 samples and found detections of 81 detections of 20 different pesticides. So really realizing that, this requires kind of collaboration, transparency about when and where pesticides being applied, and also coordinating so that, we all share the same land and kind of coordinating pesticide exposures that we're not coming across so much synergizing combinations of chemicals in the landscape and what our bees are becoming exposed to as well. It also came out of a need on behalf of pesticide applicators, where back in 2023, the Vermont state passed Vermont's rule for the control of pesticides, which included the Section 504 Protection of Bees rule. And this is enforced by the agency and applies to all pesticide applicators. And specifically, there are multiple components to the Section 504 rule. But specifically, there's this one clause around required communication about pesticide usage. And in that clause, it states no person shall apply a pesticide to a flowering crop without prior notification of at least 48 hours to an apiculturalist who has established apiary on the premises. For pesticide applicators and for beekeepers, this clause was extremely vague. Not many people understood, what on the premises really meant, what really means, and how to best comply with this rule. And again, notifying any commercial applicator also has to notify within 48 hours. And there was really no resource for pesticide applicators unless there was a pre-existing relationship with a neighboring beekeeper. There was really no tool that allowed them to visualize neighboring beekeepers and be able to comply with this rule. So this is where FieldWatch has really come into play as a filling a need in Vermont's agriculture. And this is sort of what the site looks like, but Curt is going to walk us through how to make an account, how to use it, how to apply your apiaries. But this is something that perhaps a pesticide applicator would see. And as they zoom in on their, whichever field they're servicing, they're able to see the plots and whatever crops and attributes of that crop the owner has listed, and for your apiaries as well. So it'll give, the address, location, your contact information so they can contact you about a nearby pesticide application and notify you. It's supposed to comply with that rule and really just to do their due diligence to prevent unwanted and inadvertent pesticide exposures and kills potentially to your bees. Okay, some other goals here before I hand it off to Curt. Other field watch goals. So one, of course, to reduce unintended pesticide exposures, kills to bees, and also sensitive crops. This tool has been really popular with organic farmers specifically, but other farmers as well in larger agricultural states, they're dealing more with aerial applications and drift from pesticide tolerant crops onto non-tolerant crops and causing crop damage. In Vermont, we don't engage in a lot of aerial applications. However, drone application is becoming more common in the state and is becoming popularized. And so there's something to be aware of, and that it might be a useful tool for pesticide applicators going forward. Of course, improving applicator compliance with Section 504, like I mentioned. We're also hoping that FieldWatch can be used as a tool to aid in the compliance with new Endangered Species Act regulations for applicators, which have much more strict regulations around which chemicals can be applied based on field attributes. And so those all could be listed within the FieldWatch interface. And it's also a great way for us to better understand crop acreage in the state and specifically around organic production, which we don't have a great metric of currently in Vermont. So with that, I will hand it over, unless I'm happy to take any questions in the transition as well, but I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And Curt, you should have sharing capability.
Give me a second here. I am not a Zoom expert,
Take your
but
time, and
let
if
me.
no problem. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm also going to drop in the chat our current Vermont mapping portal that you can explore yourself as we go through.
Okay, I found the share button. Sorry about that.
Take your time.
No worries. Well, hey, Sydney, I appreciate you taking the time to introduce me. So, thanks to Sydney, I think this presentation might even be a little bit quicker and more brief than what we expected because she's done such a great job of laying some of this out up front. So, first off, can you all see my screen? Is it up there? Are we good?
I don't see your screen yet.
Kathy, you said you see it, correct?
I
Oh,
see
well,
you. I don't see your shared screen.
Well, let me get back to that and let me make
maybe
sure.
just try it again. Sometimes it,
Okay, now you should see it.
yes, looks great.
Very good. Well, so two disclaimers. Number one, I am going to remove my camera because I'm one of those people that I hate when somebody presents that I feel like I've got to watch them and the presentation too. So I'm going to remove my camera here any second. But the second disclaimer for that is we are deep into the month of March. And for some of us, and I'll be honest, some of us have a real problem with uh, basketball And so I've got a basketball game running in the background in my office. So this way you can't see me either pumping my fist or getting angry while I'm presenting. So again, I'll try and make this as interactive as possible. So please feel free to utilize the chat and feel free to ask any questions. But typically what I try to do is run through this and then we can go through any questions you might have at the end. So Sydney, one of the things that I really like to do, rather than spending a great amount of time in terms of how to sign up and use the platform, because I'll be honest, it's very, very simple to do so. I like helping people understand a little bit more of the background. So Sydney, you already gave some of that. So I'm going to blast through a good deal of this and it shouldn't take too long. So really, one of the things I like to do is I like to start with, how it started. So when you really step back to all the way to the beginning of this platform, it started with a problem. And the problem was off-target spray drift in a specialty crop in tomatoes here in Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. And you can see in 2008, there was a huge issue with nearly $750,000 of crop losses in that period. So they came to Purdue University and said, hey, we've got an issue. How do we solve this? We know you've got some folks working with GIS and mapping. And one of the faculty at Purdue said, I think this Google Maps thing might take off. Let's see if we can harness it and let's see if we can make it work. So literally by 2009, you can see that their drift incidents were reduced by 50%, damage by 90%, and they realized that they were kind of onto something. So it really started as a homegrown thing here in Indiana and the Midwest, but after that, it really kind of exploded and started taking off. So, this next slide really just what our mission is, and it always has been, and it still is today. And Sydney went through some of it, but it's really about communication, awareness, and stewardship among growers, beekeepers. But I've got pesticide applicators highlighted because one of the things that we tell people is it doesn't matter a lick how many bees you've got mapped, how many crops you've got mapped. If we don't have pesticide applicators using this tool and putting eyes on it, we've really all wasted our time. And so as we get a little bit deeper in, I'll show you how many pesticide applicators we have looking at this. But needless to say, the pesticide applicators live and die by this platform in the states. One of the terms we're starting to use is geographies because we're operating north of the border in Canada now in 3 provinces, possibly a 4th later this year. For some reason, they don't like the word state referenced when we talk about Canada. So we use the word geography. So the one thing that you'll see that I've got circled here, if you don't remember anything else, just remember the fact that we are a nonprofit. And once the registry comes to a geography, a state, or a province, it's both free and voluntary for everyone to use. So obviously there was a cost to the state with the Department of Agriculture. They've funded that, but once they've funded that, it is free for all of you to use. So, let's move on. So how's it going? How many do we serve? Who and why? So producers, you can see that we're up to almost 48,000 crop producers, just a little over 31,000 beekeepers, over 500,000 beehives. The applicators, this one is interesting. So just take note that I've said 17,000 applicators with an account in our system. You'll see another number that I've got down there that says 30,000 via software partners. I'll get to that in a minute. But another thing that we're also doing is we've harnessed this platform for worker protection within the seed industry. Started in seed corn, now we're working in seed canola up in Canada. So it's really been a very adaptable platform that we've used for a lot of different areas. So again, I'm going to blast through some of these. Sydney talked about some of where our impact is today, but one of the things that we like to show is our impact in the early years. So we were started in 2008. We were spun out as a nonprofit in 2012, but our actual first employee started in 2014. Our current president and CEO was our first employee. So by 2014, you can see this thing was almost getting to the point where it was out of control. A university was trying to manage this from their standpoint, and they cried uncle. They said, hey, we can't do this. So, in 2014, that's where we were. So fast forward from 2014 to 2019, you can see how much we grew from 2014 to 2019. I came on board in 2021 and things then just continued to grow. So this is where we were as of last year in 2025. So you'll see that we do not yet have on this particular graphic, Vermont turned green on this map because this was pulled from our 2025 impact report. But as we get into and through 2026, we will definitely show that we've got Vermont on the registry and the impact that we've got there. But suffice it to say that, you take a look at that map and we've got the lion's share of the continental US impacted. But the cool thing is, as Sydney said, Vermont is really going to be the first New England state, and I honestly think that you all are going to make a huge impact in New England. So I like showing this particular graphic because, again, based on the size of the pins, sizes of the states, this can be a little bit deceptive, but this is everything mapped all across North America as of late 2025. So you'll see all of the beehives mapped out in California, and then you'll see places like South Dakota and all of that dark area. The propensity of mapping bees is just absolutely huge. So what I like doing now is I like taking this exact same map and stripping away all of the crops and showing you just the beehive sites that are mapped. So again, it's extensive. There's a lot of beehives mapped out there, but you all are east of the Mississippi. At this point, you don't care about the rest of the country, right? You don't care about Canada. So let's look at what's mapped east of the Mississippi, right? So still, there's a ton of beehives mapped east of the Mississippi. And this was something that I pulled just in the last few days. So you can see that, yes, there are some bees mapped in Vermont. Some of you are getting that started, and we think that's a great thing. So again, I'm not going to spend time, but Sydney already flashed up this slide. So again, one of the things that we do as a nonprofit, we don't align ourselves with a lot of other nonprofits, but if you don't remember anything else, just remember that since 2016, we've been partnering with the Honeybee Health Coalition. They are an amazing group doing a lot of work for not just honeybees, but native pollinators all across North America. And they are really starting to branch out even outside of North America because they're getting calls, they're getting requests from outside of just North America. So again, it's a great organization, but we really have a vested interest in pollinator protection because we all know, right? Without pollinators, a good number of our food crops just flat out wouldn't exist. So that's one of the reasons why we began taking on mapping beehives. So I like backing up and telling folks that the registry that started in 2008 was specifically specialty crops. But in roughly the 2012 time period, we had beekeepers come to us and say, hey, what about our bees? Our bees are as critical to crops, food production as anything else in agriculture. Would you consider mapping our bees? And so that's when our board looked at it and reviewed it and said, yeah, mapping bees is just as important as mapping crops. And so that's where it all, kind of synergized, came together, and we began doing all of the things that we're currently doing. So I like showing some of the growth year over year too, right? So, from 2016 to 2025, we obviously added a lot of geographies and states, but just in beekeepers and hives alone, you can see a large amount of growth there. Now, if you take a look at numbers of beekeepers as well as hives from 2023 to 2025, you all know that the losses, colony collapse, some of the other issues, that is absolutely reflected here in our numbers. But no matter, all of that, we still continue to grow and people are continuing to map their bees on our platform. So again, I talked a little bit about the applicators, and again, 17,000 plus applicators with accounts in our system. But the real interesting part of that, and I'll get to another slide in a minute, but we've got a ton of applicators that work specifically in either commercial agriculture or other areas that are tangential to agriculture that pull in this data directly to their other platforms. So they don't necessarily have a need to have an account in our system. They get this data delivered basically to their other systems, their other mapping platforms, and they can see exactly what is going on and where. So Sydney showed a slide very similar to this, but I pulled this one up, and this is an actual Vermont beehive site. So if you are a pesticide applicator making an application somewhere around, what town is this? So this looks like it's Nashville or somewhere in that area,
Jericho.
but it's near Millbrook Acres. So you've got this beekeeper named Andrew. So if I were an applicator making an application in this area and I see this hive mapped around Millbrook Acres, I would drill into this and I would see, oh, Andrew's got some bees there. Now, I'm not going to tell you that every applicator is going to reach out and make a call, but what we do tell people is the applicators that put eyes on these maps, 99 times out of 100, they see what you've got mapped, and even if they don't contact you, they will modify behaviors. They will change what they do and when, such that they avoid damages. Because at the end of the day, this isn't only free insurance for you as a beekeeper, but it's also free insurance for them to not be idiots, not have claims, and not cause damage. Because I don't care how many great policies and procedures a Department of Ag has or an insurance company has, none of that ever makes two parties whole when there's a damage. So doing the right things up front is kind of the premise of what we've been advocating for all along. And we've got data to show that it really does, in fact, make a difference. So these are those precision ag or application platforms that I talked about. So everybody from John Deere in the upper left corner to, and I strategically do this specifically for the ag folks. So Raven is owned by Case IH, and I try and put Deere and Case IH in very different corners of a screen. But you've got all of these different platforms, whether they're ground-based, whether they're aerial based, where these 30,000 plus, and I think that's a very, very low estimate number, but these folks all pull this data into their specific systems that they use when they're doing their work. So they can see everything that we just shared from the website, but they see it directly into their platforms. Now, another thing that we really like to share is starting way back in 2021, we've done surveys of many of our users. Again, I don't go into the details of this, but this really helps reinforce that we've got beekeepers that love the system. You know, they will tell you that they have applicators, crop dusters that contact them, reach out to them. It's really been a tool to create relationships between parties that in the past didn't necessarily know what the others were doing, and to some extent really didn't understand the impact that their work could have either on, you know, honeybee colonies, specialty crops, or things like that. So we really feel like we have moved the needle in a lot of places via this platform. So again, this is just some feedback from the DriftWatch users. And one of the things that I really like highlighting here is that larger one over on the right-hand side of the screen. And again, we're not going to tell you that every applicator does this, but what we like telling applicators that do take these extra steps is they are the folks that people are going to love. People are going to support them when they take these steps. You know, this applicator says, I call every beekeeper within 2 miles of an application and give them at least 24 hours of notice in case they want to pen up their bees the night before the application. That's huge. You know, again, we've had aerial applicators that have come up to me at conferences and told me that, hey, I'm going to a bee school tomorrow. And I've stopped and I've said, wait a minute, why are you going to a bee school? You're not a beekeeper. And this applicator's response was, I want to understand the people that I'm working in, around, and near so I can better understand how to communicate with them and how to serve them. And when I hear things like that, I'm overwhelmed that we have applicators that really take this all to heart and really want to do the right things. So again, just a couple other highlights. Ohio does a great job with this system. Virginia, which is a little closer to you all, again, we've got a lot of feedback that shows that people are really big fans. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people that have the application and don't use it as well as others. What I like telling people that our application is much like the speed limit signs on a highway or an interstate, right? We drive the interstates. We know that not everybody pays attention to those speed limit signs. But for those that don't and those that exceed it and cause issues, there are penalties. And that's kind of what I like in our registry too, right? We've given a visual out there. We've told you where the landmines are. If you choose to run through a landmine area, and I like telling applicators this, if you want to run through a landmine area naked and blindfolded, whatever you get, that's what you're going to get. One of the things I like sharing as well is just a little bit about our membership, our funding, and how it's all put together. Obviously, member states and provinces fund us, our sponsors, trade associations, applicators, and really a whole host of folks. But at the end of the day, because of those types of support, all the registries then become free to use in the states that choose to bring them in. I won't dwell on this one at all, but this is just a short list of many of our sponsors. So one of the things that we love that we get to share is, a lot of times, whether it's beekeepers or crop producers, specifically organics, like Sydney had mentioned, a lot of times we've got groups in agriculture that think the other group is a problem, or big agriculture or chemical inputs or whatever the case might be. And the nice thing is we are supported by so many of them and we serve so many of them together that we are in a great position to stop people and say, no, FMC, Bayer, BASF, they're not bad actors. In fact, we've got people that work in those companies that day in and day out work to protect pollinators, sensitive crops. And, it's a balancing act in everything that they do and as well as what we do. So just kind of looking ahead, right, into 2026, we are continuing to grow this platform. But one of the things that we're also doing is we are in the process right now of a complete retool of this platform to bring it into the 21st century. So as you start this year and you get things mapped and you start using it, one of the things that we'd love to get input from, specifically from new folks like you all in Vermont, is what do you see? What do you like? What do you not like? What can we make better? Because we will have folks that have been in and working with the platform since 2008, 2009. And, they look at it and say, yeah, it is what it is. And we use it and it's okay. But a fresh set of eyes can always give us new input and new insights as to, what we can do better. So, as I start to land this plane, some of the questions are, what all's needed of you? Well, the first thing, right, is get signed up and get your apiaries mapped. It's not difficult. I'm going to walk through a few of those steps here in a minute. Literally, I've presented some of the links and QR codes early in a presentation, and I've learned that I shouldn't do that because when I do that, people snap that QR code, and by the time I get to the end of the presentation, I ask for a show of hands, and people will say, "Yeah, I've mapped my apiaries. I've created an account." And I said, do you remember anything I said in the middle? And they said, no, but I'm signed up. So I'm like, well, that's I guess that's all that matters, right? So again, you've got complete control of who does and doesn't see your apiaries, like Sydney said, and I'll show you that here in a minute. But also, let Sydney know how we can best help promote the registry to any of your areas. Big thing is share it with your neighbors, anybody that works in, around, and near you, because one of the things that we found is it's a whole lot easier. I don't care if it's a mosquito abatement company, somebody working in lawn and pest control, or somebody working in agriculture. If you walk up to them and show them a phone and say, hey, did you see that I've got bees mapped here? That's a whole lot easier than just confronting them face to face and saying, are you an idiot? Well, no, now you're showing them something physically that you can point them to say, hey, this is a platform that you really ought to look at before you do your work, so you can make better decisions. So again, ask questions and just follow everything that both Sydney and all of us are going to bring forward to you. So this next one is really simple. That QR up in the upper left just takes you to fieldwatch.com if you want to learn more, but the one in the lower right takes you directly to Vermont BeeCheck.org. So if anybody wants to click on that one right now and snap on that one, that's where you're going to log in and create an account, and it'll walk you right through all of the steps that you need to do to create an account. So I'll just leave this one up here for just a second in case anybody wants to go ahead and grab that one, but I'm going to walk through it, and then at the end I'll show you that again in case you missed it.
And I'll just note real quick while we're giving them a minute that I forgot to mention that so the B Lab is helping manage the FieldWatch program, and the Vermont Agency of Ag has contracted the B Lab to be what FieldWatch calls a data steward. So in every state, there's kind of a state champion for the program, and so I'm kind of here as a resource for you all for this program. If you need help signing up, mapping your apiaries, adjusting anything, any questions at all, I'm here for you guys. So you just let me know.
And Sydney, thanks for throwing that in, because that's a hugely important part of how the platform works. So what I joke with people all the time, but it's really not a joke, is we at FieldWatch, we're really just the wizard behind the curtain that helps put all this together. This is, as you will see, this is the Vermont registry. And Sydney is really what we call the data steward. Everything that gets mapped on the Vermont registry will cross Sydney's desk for approval, scrutiny, feedback, or whatever the case might be. So she will be very aware of everything that gets mapped, and whether it's your account, whether it's your bees, whether it's anything that you're doing, she has full access as an administrator to take a look at that. So now let's step on through, right? So assuming that you looked at that and you clicked on that QR, or you didn't, at some point you will, but at this point, the first thing that you want to do, it will take you to this page, and you'll notice up here in the very top of the page, right, you'll see the Vermont Department of Ag logo, and you'll also see the UVM logo, right? And again, that really helps reinforce that this is Vermont's registry. We are just, we're the third logo here, right? We're the wizard behind the curtain that puts it all together. So you'll come over here and you'll click on BeeCheck. Click here to sign up if you only keep bees and want to create an account. So then as you walk through this, the next step will be, you enter your username, email address. Now, one of the things that I will tell you is we suggest that you have your username as your email address. I have more accounts in this system than I can count on two hands. So I create them all unique and use different usernames and have multiple accounts at the same email address. I don't want to confuse you with any of that, but what's most simple is just having your username be your email address, so you don't have to worry about another thing to remember. It just makes it a lot simpler. But then one of the things, as Sydney mentioned, so, these arrows here in the middle, as you get to this point, just take a look at this, because this is something that you can change at any point when you walk through your account, but you can do this at initial setup too. There are basically two options here. It says display my beehive locations to everyone viewing the public map, or applicators registered with BeeCheck only. Now, the interesting part about this is in every geography that we've got across North America, with the exception right now of two, one being California and the other one being Ohio, those two have chosen to say that they do not want a public map. So right now, if anybody goes to beecheck.org or driftwatch.org and clicks on Vermont, they will see anything that beekeepers or crop producers have chosen to put in that public space. And that's really all it means. And again, as we retool this and go further forward with it, We may further enhance those features to make it a little bit more firewall, but it's really simple. So again, at any point when you log into your account, if you forget this, that arrow over there on the far left where it says My Profile, this will take you back to those options again, and you can make those changes at any point in time once you have an account. Now, this is just a couple additional details in your account as you walk through it. So you'll see that button up in the upper left that says Add an Apiary. So you'll select your state or province. Again, obviously, you will select Vermont. There are times when we might have a Vermont beekeeper that wants to map an apiary location that is in a bordering state, something like that. We don't preclude that, but Sydney will see that and can take control of that. We had something very similar to that the other day where we had a beekeeper from, I believe it was Texas, wanting to map some bees in Florida. And what I told the data steward in Texas was they're free to map those bees in Florida, but Florida is not currently a user state. So maybe they've got a second home in Florida or whatever the case might be. But if it makes them feel better to map those there, go ahead. But at this point, with a non-user state like Florida, more than likely nobody's going to look at it. And every now and then I've looked and we'll have a beehive that for whatever reason got mapped up in Nova Scotia or someplace like that. Hey, more power to that beekeeper, but again, nobody's paying attention to bees mapped up in Nova Scotia, at least as of today. So again, as you walk through it, you will select the purpose of your bees, whether it's hobbyist or commercial, whether those bees are permanent for the season or whether you move those for pollination. And again, what I'm showing you here is the web interface, but there's also a mobile app, which is very, very useful for the beekeeper. That allows you, when you're out in a bee yard, to have that location turned on and be exactly where you're at. And if you're moving hives from one location to another, it's really easy to drop and drag and things like that. So it just makes life really simple, as simple as it can be for an old system, right? For beekeepers to use at this point. Now, this next one, again, if you're submitting a new apiary, you've got the option to give nicknames to a bee yard. You can also make comments for the public registry if you're mapping publicly, if there's something that you want the public to see. But there's also an area where you can put comments directly for your data steward. So for Sydney. So if there was something that you wanted her to specifically see on a bee yard that you were mapping, go ahead and throw that in there because she's the only one that will see that note. So again, as you go to submit this new apiary, there's a couple of features that it looks at, and it asks you whether or not you have the map near your site's location. So that's typically easier when you're working on a browser, larger screen, and you can zoom in and out as to where you're at. But if you're working on a mobile device, or let's say you've got a laptop and you're wireless and you're out in the field, you can say center the map using my location, and it will find exactly where you're at. So again, some of this is a little bit difficult to take a look at from this standpoint, but when you're in the system, it will really be extremely intuitive. And the nice thing is Sydney has already mapped a few bee locations, so she's very familiar with it. So really at this point, that is kind of the end of what I have. And here's those QR codes again. So I'll at least pull my camera back up so you can see that I'm still upright and I haven't fallen over and I've not been too immersed into my basketball game.
I also just
Again,
I want to I'm sorry, Curt. I
no, go
also just
ahead.
want to reiterate that of course this is a voluntary resource for both beekeepers, crop producers, and pesticide applicators. So pesticide applicators are not enforced or it's not mandatory to use this tool or notify you. but at least we can provide them with a resource to do their due diligence. And so over the course of, this spring, we're really trying to shop the tool around to the beekeepers, the crop producers, and try to get the map populated so that it has relevant information for pesticide applicators. And then we will be incorporating, learning how to use the FieldWatch tool into pesticide certification trainings through UVM, and also providing training sessions to pesticide applicators for pesticide continued education credits, which are required by applicators every year. So really trying to gauge interest from you all first, and then we'll be posing it to the pesticide applicators.
Thanks for that, Sydney. I appreciate that. And that's a really important part, right? Getting this into training modules for the pesticide applicators, that's really where the rubber hits the road with this, because obviously, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter how much we have mapped until the pesticide applicators see it and start using it. And Vermont's not a huge state, right? But you've got a lot of specialty crops and a lot of things in your state as well. And one of the things that you'll notice when you start looking at the map is beehives only create a pin. And so that's a point on a map. But the more crops that you get mapped, now those applicators see a larger polygon, and it gives them, in essence, more landmines in their minefield to pay attention to. So once you've got more crops mapped as well, it really helps increase the applicator's need to pay attention to the registry.
We've also opted in Vermont to have on the map a 2 mile radius, I believe, overlay over every apiary location. And while that 2 mile radius isn't enforced in any way through Section 504 notification rules, it does provide the pesticide applicator with a good visualization of like what we suggest, what we recommend around notification in terms of how far we know that honeybees are likely foraging away from their apiary sites. So that also will
No,
help.
that's a good point too, because that bubble really helps applicators see that there's a beehive there. They see a large bubble, and then they can see in the middle of the bubble where those hive sites are pinned. Now, I'm not seeing the chat, but did we have any questions here, Sydney?
Not too many questions. I've answered a couple that have come up, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, also you're welcome to unmute yourself and speak up if you'd like. And of course, if you don't end up signing up tonight or you do and you come across issues, just feel free to shoot me an email, and happy to meet or walk you through anything.
Well, I think the good thing, Sydney, that most of your folks have seen here with your introduction and all of that, you are very close to being able to give a presentation like this all on your own. Again, you don't need me, and I'll be honest, Vermont people probably want to hear from somebody in Vermont more than they want to hear from some idiot from Indiana. So
Well, I figured, I'll give an introduction just so it's not some stranger on the screen. But
no,
no,
no, that
this
was
is
great. Appreciate
great.
that.
But
Appreciate that.
you know a lot of the backstory, which is helpful. So
I could give this presentation almost in my sleep.
while watching a basketball game.
Well, the good thing is we were at halftime when I started, so that helped me tune into my presentation and kind of leave the game go.
Well, here we have a question. Is there any feature in the system where crops are mapped to also list the common pesticides that would be applied for those crops during the season?
So the short answer to that is right now, no. As Sydney mentioned, we're talking about doing some things with Endangered Species Act and things like that. So the thing to remember, at least right now, is the registry has been a way for both crop producers and beekeepers to visually give applicators, as I said, really those areas that they need to pay attention to and be cautious of. We've not yet moved to the extent of applicators or growers listing anything that they're applying. We've had some calls for that type of thing, but I think until we completely get our system revamped and have a much greater level of security, I don't think us or our board would ever opt in for something a bit like that. Because one of the fears that our board has had with this for years is if you have crop producers and retailers that say when and where they applied pesticide A, B, and C, uh, the ability for groups such as environmental activists, whoever those might be, would have an opportunity to start saying and mapping and heat mapping all over the country, uh, all of what they're calling danger areas, and that's absolutely something that we've wanted to avoid. But as I've said, we've had applicators who have said, hey, we want to voluntarily show folks what we're doing and where and why and what rates and conditions. So that's definitely something that down the road might be a possibility, but right now the answer is no.
Just got one more question. Will this be helpful for beekeepers living near railroad tracks? Every few years, the railroad sprays along the railroad to keep overgrowth down. And I'll just mention, just kind of working in partnership with the Agency of Ag, they contract with commercial pesticide application companies, that will also be apprised of the FieldWatch services and, be asked to use the FieldWatch services as well. So yes, it's not just agricultural pesticide applications that this will be useful for. It's all kinds, even like mosquito sprays. I know summer before last, they were doing a ton of mosquito sprays. There was a triple E outbreak. Things like that will also be serviced through the FieldWatch site as well, or can
No,
be at
that's a good
least.
point, Sydney. In fact, all across North America, we have right-of-way folks, we have power companies, we have rail, we have highways, we have departments of transportation. It's amazing how many non-agricultural entities pay attention to the registry. We've got solar farm areas, we've got wind turbine areas, we've got all kinds of, yeah, somebody just mentioned solar farm. We've got a ton of areas doing a lot of work in a lot of tangential areas that, again, the promising thing from our standpoint is when people hear about the registry and understand that there's a tool out there, 9 times out of 10, they look at it and say, hey, yeah, we want to do the right things. We want to be the responsible parties and companies. And so, yeah, we get a lot of non-agricultural folks paying attention to the registry and again, modifying behaviors based on what they see.
I also just want to mention one more thing. And so this Field Watch right now is in a year contract and, with hopes to continue it in the future if it is popular with Vermont stakeholders. But typically the sites need to be renewed annually. So if it does continue, just keep your eye out for that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Curt, they'll receive an email about renewals, or will they have to sign on to the Field Watch site?
No, no, that's a great point. So we're actually in the process of doing that right now. So in the first quarter of every year, with the exception of some of the certified organics, vineyards, tree fruits, things that really are not uh, rotational crops, things that don't change year over year, beehive sites are definitely something that we ask for an annual renewal. So what you'll see in 2027 is starting in the early late March, early April timeframe. You'll see a renewal email that comes from us, and it will just say that you have beehive sites that were mapped in 2026. And if you don't need to make any changes, we just provide a simple link that you can click that says keep everything the same as last year. Makes it very simple. But if you need to make changes, then we just ask that you go into your account and make those changes. We're working on a model down the road that's a little bit more like an opt out versus a continual opt in. But one of the things that we've done, and the reason we've done the renewal as we have, is we've had applicators that really want to make certain that this data is updated, refreshed, and valid from year to year. So that's why we've done what we've done. But the other thing that applicators also have the ability to do, So let's say you have somebody who wants to be a bad actor and wants to map beehives in all four corners of their 6 acre residential property to say that we want to keep pesticide applicators at bay. But an applicator comes out to do work in an area near there and they see that there are no hives. They have a real simple way to flag that particular site and send it back to Sydney and say, Sydney, take a look at this because we don't see any beehives here. So we've definitely got a system of checks and balances. And I'll be honest, we see that type of abuse very, very rarely, but it does happen. So that's why we put some things in that applicators have the ability to flag things back to the data steward for review.
Thanks, Curt. We have a question. Would the state ever consider possibly linking hive registration with this system if a beekeeper was acceptable to that action? And we have actually had discussions with the state. There was discussion about simply uploading the apiary registration into the FieldWatch map, but the state has a lot of permissions issues with that, and their database is currently very archaic, and so gaining beekeeper permission to opt in to automatic uploading of their registered sites is actually more complicated than it sounds for our state at least. And we figured, at least for now, this is a great way as a pilot program to just gauge interest, right? If we just automatically uploaded stuff into the map, we wouldn't really be able to understand how interested and popular this tool is with stakeholders. So right as of now, we're asking that folks voluntarily upload their sites. Hopefully, it's not too cumbersome. And potentially going forward, that could be a possibility, but it depends on their database and if it gets improved.
No, that's a good answer, Sydney. And obviously that potential exists. We have other states that do that very type of thing. But the nice thing is, again, as we retool this system, connecting a state registry and our system will be much, much simpler a couple of years down the road. So when and if Vermont would choose to do that and go through all of the permissions that it takes to get that done, then at that point it'll be brutally simple if you choose to do it. Yeah, I appreciate all of the questions and all of the input so far. That means people actually did pay attention. So
I've
appreciate
gotten
that.
quite a lot of new listings coming through my email, so that's good.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
and we don't have too many people on this call tonight, but this video is going to be recorded and listed on the Vermont Beekeepers Association archive so people can revisit. And, definitely for, any of your beekeeper friends that weren't able to join us tonight, definitely let them know about the program and how easy it is to sign up and if they would be interested as well. Awesome. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, I love that feedback. And again, like I said,
Yeah.
that's why I didn't spend too much time going through it because it really is. It's fairly simple to set up an account and get your apiaries mapped. And like I said, the good thing is, Sydney is your go-to person. So if you have questions, she can help you. But we're always here and able to assist and help as well. So we're always available.
And to answer how are beekeepers being informed of this as you move forward, we're really relying on the VBA for our outreach just to reach like the most, beekeepers in the state. And so I'll hopefully continually provide these webinars, at least annually, but of course this video will also be on the website. I also think it might be a good idea to just make like a how-to video and maybe post that on the VBA's website and also the B Lab's website. So we're currently the production site like just went live maybe like a month ago, and so we're right now just trying to get all of our ducks in a row and the FieldWatch portal, how you sign in and all of that will be listed on the B Lab website and the Agency of Ag's website. So it'll be really easy access there, but really just through videos and, through the VBA events, things like that. But if you have other ideas for best ways to do outreach on this program, I'm open. thinking also local county level beekeeping clubs are always a great resource for outreach as well. So I've emailed so far kind of the Bee Labs mailing list of beekeepers that have just participated in our programming over the years with relevant information. But yeah, open to other ideas. Well, if there are no other questions, we can call it a night. Thank you so
Well,
much for
very good.
being here, Curt.
I appreciate everybody's time in, watching this, paying attention to it, and especially all of the questions. And again, we really look forward to working with the state of Vermont. It's great to finally have somebody from the New England area on board, and I'm glad to see Vermont taking that leadership step.
And thanks so much for being here on an evening.
Not a problem. Now I
We
can
we
watch
love
the end of
evenings.
my basketball game.
Great. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks,
All right. Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank
All right.
you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good to see you, Sydney.
You too, Kathy.